My name is Gabriel Foster. I am 70 years old, and I have learned that family is not about blood. It's about loyalty. Last Sunday at Easter dinner, my son and his wife demanded I sign over my house. When I refused, my daughter-in-law threw her wine glass straight at my face, cutting my cheek to the bone. As the blood ran down my shirt, my son Jason screamed, "You're being selfish!" I just smiled, drove myself to the ER, and texted my lawyer. Phase 1 is complete. What they didn't know is that the entire attack was caught on camera, and I had been waiting for them to make this mistake for 6 months. Before I tell you how I set the trap, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. And please like and subscribe if you believe that respect is earned, not given. The trap was truly set last Wednesday. I was in my home office, not tending to roses like my neighbors imagined, but reviewing quarterly reports from an offshore trust. The phone rang, and I saw my son Jason's name flash on the screen. I put the call on speaker and continued my work. "Dad." "Hey, Dad." His voice was thin, laced with a familiar anxiety. The kind of anxiety a man gets when he's desperate. "Jason, what a surprise. How are you?" "I'm good, Dad. Great. Look, I know it's last minute, but Easter is this Sunday. We were thinking maybe we could have dinner at your house." I stopped typing. I leaned back in my leather chair and stared at the phone. My house. Of all places, he wanted to come to my house. My daughter-in-law Alicia hated this house. She called it a relic, a depressing old mausoleum. She had only visited twice in the last year, and both times she acted as if she were allergic to the antique furniture. This wasn't an invitation. It was a move. "That sounds fine, son. But why the sudden interest in my old mausoleum?" He laughed nervously, a high-pitched sound. "Oh, come on, Dad. It's Easter. We just want to spend it with you. And, well, Alicia's parents are in town. Mike and Diana. They'd love to see you too." There it was. The other half of the equation. The sharks were circling. Mike and Diana Russo. Two people who had perfected the art of living well on other people's money. I knew for a fact they had just filed for a fraudulent bankruptcy in Florida. My son Jason is a good man at his core, or at least he used to be. But he is weak. He's easily manipulated, and he is in deep, deep trouble. I know this because I am not just a simple retired old man. I was for 40 years a senior financial crimes investigator for one of the largest corporate security firms in the world. I don't just see people. I see patterns. And Jason's pattern for the last 6 months was a desperate spiral. I knew he was drowning in over $250,000 of gambling debts. I knew Alicia was spending money she didn't have, likely embezzled from her employer. And I knew they saw me as their solution, their get-out-of-jail-free card. "Dad, you still there?" I smiled. "Of course, son. That sounds wonderful. I would love to host everyone. My home is your home, you know that." "Great, Dad, thanks. We'll see you Sunday around 6. He hung up, and the silence in my office felt heavy. I looked at a photo on my desk. My late wife, Emily. "They're coming for the house, Emily," I whispered, "and I'm going to be ready for them." The trap was officially baited. I immediately picked up my secure line and dialed my lawyer. Ben Carter answered on the first ring. "Ben, it's Gabe. I was wondering when you'd call." His voice crackled. "The Easter invitation." "You're getting good, Ben. Sunday at 6, my house. They're bringing the in-laws." Ben sighed. "Gabe, are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this? We can shut them down right now. We have the proof of Alicia's embezzlement. We have the records of Jason's debts." "No," I said firmly. "It's not enough. If I just cut them off, they'll play the victims. They'll tell the world I'm a cold-hearted old man, abandoning his family. No. I need them to show me who they really are. I need them to make the first move. A move so blatant, so undeniable that no one can defend them." I had learned one thing in 40 years of investigations. Criminals, especially desperate ones, always overplay their hand. The Emily Foster Trust is locked down, right? I asked. Tighter than Fort Knox, Ben assured me. They can't touch a dime of your real money. As far as they know, all you have is this house and your pension. Good. And the surveillance, the pinhole cameras in the living room, the dining room, and your office are active. The microphones are live. Everything is being recorded to a secure cloud server just as you requested. I leaned back. What they don't know, Ben, is that I already fixed Jason's biggest problem. I already paid off his $250,000 marker with that loan shark in Miami. There was a sharp intake of breath on Ben's end. Gabe, you what, Wenchonko? A month ago, anonymously, I gave him a clean slate. I wanted to see what he would do. Would he come to me, confess, and ask for help to rebuild his life? Or would he see it as a lucky break and double down on his greed? And now he's coming for your house, Ben finished, his voice grim. Now he's coming for the house, I confirmed. He didn't just fail the test, Ben. He's trying to burn the whole school down. For the next 3 days, I played the part of the happy, slightly senile grandfather. I went to the store, bought a large turkey, potatoes, and ingredients for Emily's famous apple pie. I even called Alicia to ask her what wine her parents preferred, knowing full well they were connoisseurs of anything expensive and free. "Oh, Gabe, that's so sweet," she cooed over the phone. "Don't worry about it. We'll bring the wine. We want this to be a perfect evening." I could hear the hidden meaning in her words. Our perfect evening, our new beginning. In my house. Sunday arrived. The house was quiet. I had spent the morning in Emily's garden. At 5 p.m. I checked the systems one last time. All cameras were green. All microphones were active. I put the silver pen in my shirt pocket. It wasn't just a pen. It was a high-fidelity audio recorder. At 6 o'clock on the dot, their car pulled into the driveway. A brand new BMW I knew they couldn't afford. I shuffled to the door, putting on my best confused old man face. I opened it with a wide, welcoming smile. "Jason, Alicia, you're here." And there they were, Mike and Diana Russo. They were dressed up, Alicia in a silk dress that probably cost $2,000, Mike in a suit that smelled of new money. They walked past me without a greeting, their eyes scanning the entryway. "This foyer is darker than I remember," Diana said, wrinkling her nose. "We'll need to paint this whole area, Mike. Something lighter, a nice cream." Mike nodded, tapping the wall with his knuckle. "It's solid, though. Good bones. We can work with this." They were already redecorating. They hadn't even said hello. Jason looked pale. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Hey, Dad. Thanks for having us." "Nonsense, son. Come in," I said, shuffling behind them. Alicia walked straight to the hallway bookshelf, the one holding Emily's collection of classic novels. She whispered to Jason, but the microphone in my pen picked it up clear as day. "Are you sure this is where he keeps the safe? It just looks like a bunch of dusty old books." "That's what he told me," Jason whispered back. I smiled, my heart turning to a block of ice. I had lied to Jason about the safe's location 10 years ago, just to see if he would ever try to access it. He never had. Until now. As they moved into the dining room, Diana Russo, the mother-in-law, paused by the large floral arrangement on the dining table. She leaned in, pretending to smell the lilies, and whispered to her husband. "Alicia says if he refuses to let us move in, Jason is supposed to get aggressive. Make it look like the old man is a danger to himself. Stick to the plan." I stood at the entrance of the dining room, holding the roast turkey. "Dinner is served," I announced cheerfully. "Let's begin." We sat at the dining room table. The table my late wife Emily and I had bought at a flea market 40 years ago, the one we refinished by hand in our garage. Now it was covered in her best china, which I only used on special occasions. Alicia, my daughter-in-law, picked up her heavy silver fork. "Gabe, this turkey is lovely. So traditional." I knew what she meant. She meant it was simple, uninspired. Peasant food. I had spent the entire morning preparing it, basting it, making sure it was perfect. Beside her, her father, Mike Russo, swirled the wine in his glass. It was the expensive Cabernet Alicia had insisted on bringing. "A good aroma?" Mike announced as if he were a judge. "A bit heavy on the tannins for my taste, but acceptable. Very acceptable." I just smiled, playing my part. "Oh, I don't know much about those things, Mike. I just know what tastes good." They all exchanged that look, the one I had come to recognize so well. The look that said, he's a simpleton. He's harmless. Good. That's exactly what I wanted them to think. The pinhole camera in the corner of the dining room was recording. The high-fidelity microphone in my shirt pocket was capturing every word. Diana Alicia's mother put down her fork after a single delicate bite. Her eyes, cold and assessing, scanned the room. "Gabe," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "this house is truly lovely." "Thank you, Diana. Emily and I put a lot of work into it over the years. But it's just so much house for one person," she continued, gesturing vaguely at the ceiling. "All these empty rooms, the upkeep. It must be a terrible burden for you all alone." This was the first probe. Not a direct attack, but a test. Was I overwhelmed? Was I weak? Was I looking for a way out? I let out a small, tired sigh. "Oh, I manage. A little dusting here and there. You know it keeps me active." I didn't mention the professional cleaning service that came every Tuesday, paid for by the private trust that my family knew nothing about. Alicia saw the opening and seized it. She placed her hand on her mother's, a perfect picture of filial devotion. "Mom is just worried about you, Gabe. We all are. Especially after what she and Dad just went through." I turned my gaze to her feigning ignorance. "Oh, is everything all right?" Alicia's face contorted into an expression of practiced sadness. "It's just, they had some terrible luck. In Florida, the business, well, they lost everything. Bad luck." That's what she called it. I had read my private investigator's report 3 days ago. Fraudulent bankruptcy was the legal term. They hadn't lost everything. They had hidden it, just not well enough. They were running from creditors. Mike Russo, ever the proud patriarch, cleared his throat. "We just need a place to restart, Gabe. A place to get our feet back on the ground and rebuild." A restart. In my house. Using my money. I could see the entire chessboard laid out in front of me. They thought they were playing, but I had already placed every piece. I looked at my son. Jason had been silent the entire meal. He was just pushing his mashed potatoes around his plate. His face was pale, his hands were trembling. He knew what was coming. He was the one they were using as the battering ram. Alicia turned to him, her voice suddenly sharp. "Jason, honey, aren't you going to ask your father?" Jason visibly swallowed. He put his fork down. He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the gravy boat as if it held the answers to the universe. "Dad," he started, his voice barely a whisper. "Dad, about that. We were talking, and, well, Mike and Diana, they need a place to stay. For just a little while. And since you have all this space..." I waited. I didn't help him. I let him twist in the wind, his discomfort filling the room. "We were hoping," he finally choked out, "that they could move in here. Just temporarily, Dad. Just until they get back on their feet." Temporarily. The word of a coward. The lie you tell yourself so you can sleep at night. He still couldn't meet my eyes. I let the silence stretch, pretending to be the confused old man processing this sudden request. "Move in?" I asked, making my voice sound shaky. "Here, Mike and Diana." Alicia couldn't stand it. She slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "No, Jason, stop sugarcoating it. We discussed this." She turned to me. Her face, moments ago soft with fake sympathy, was now a hard mask of impatience and cold efficiency. "Gabe, they're moving in. Permanently." The room went quiet. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, the clock Emily had inherited from her mother. Permanently. Jason flinched as if she had slapped him. Diana and Mike just watched me, their faces hard, expectant. They had dropped the pretense. This was the demand. I don't understand," I stammered, playing my role to perfection. "Permanently." "Yes," Alicia snapped. "It makes perfect sense. They're family. And frankly, you shouldn't be alone in this big house anyway. It's not safe. You're 70 years old. You forget things. You could fall. What if something happened and no one found you for days?" There it was. The groundwork for incompetence. This was exactly what Ben Carter and I had predicted. She was already building the narrative. "So," she continued, taking a breath, "Jason and I have decided. We are all going to move in. Mike and Diana will take the 2 upstairs guest rooms. And Jason and I, will move into the master suite with you, so." My blood ran cold. The master suite. Emily's room. The room I hadn't let anyone sleep in since she passed. The room that still smelled faintly of her lavender perfume. "It's for the best," Alicia said, her voice softening into a grotesque imitation of kindness. "That way we can manage things for you." I looked at her. Manage things. "Yes, you know." She waved her hand dismissively. "The bills, the investments, the house maintenance. You're getting to that age, Gabe. You shouldn't have to worry about your finances anymore." And there it was. The kill shot. The final piece of their pathetic, transparent plan. Manage your finances. They weren't just coming for the house. They were coming for my name, my signature, my accounts, my entire life. I looked at Jason. My son. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The boy I held when his first girlfriend broke his heart. He was still staring at the gravy boat, his face pale, his jaw clenched. He had just sat there in silence and allowed his wife and her bankrupt parents to stage a hostile takeover of his father's life. The microphone in my pen was capturing every syllable. The camera in the corner was capturing every greedy, arrogant expression on their faces and every ounce of my son's pathetic cowardice. This was even better than I had imagined. I heard the words. Manage your finances. The arrogance of it hung in the air, thick and suffocating, more potent than the smell of the turkey. She had finally said it. The quiet part. The real reason for this entire charade. Manage. The word echoed in my mind. The same word I used to hear in boardrooms when a larger company was preparing a hostile takeover of a smaller one. We're just going to help them manage their assets. It was always a lie. It was always about theft. And here it was at my own dining room table from the mouths of my own family. I looked at Jason, my son. He was still staring at his plate, his face pale. He had just sat there and let his wife, a woman he'd known for 5 years, declare war on his father, the man who had raised him for 45. He said nothing. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look at me. He had become an accomplice in his own home. I thought of Emily. I thought of the 50 years we built this life. I thought of her in the garden, her hands in the soil. I thought of her sitting in that very chair Alicia was now occupying, laughing as I overcooked a steak. This house wasn't just wood and plaster. It was a testament. It was the only thing I had left of her. And they were going to take it. They were going to sleep in her bed. And they were going to use my money to do it. A cold, clear rage settled over me. Not the hot rage of an argument, but the cold, precise anger of an investigator who has just found the final piece of evidence. The camera in the corner was recording. The microphone in my pen was live. They had given me everything I needed. Slowly, deliberately, I placed my knife and fork on the china plate. The sound, a simple clink, was deafening in the sudden silence. Diana and Mike were watching me, their faces expectant. Alicia was smiling a tight, triumphant smile. She thought she had won. She thought the senile old man would simply roll over. I looked up, meeting Alicia's gaze. I let the confused old man mask I had been wearing slip away. I let her see the man I really was. The man who had negotiated million-dollar deals and dismantled entire fraud rings. "No," I said. The word was quiet. It wasn't a shout. It was a statement of fact, a granite wall. Alicia's smile didn't just fade. It froze. It shattered. What did you just say?" Mike and Diana looked at each other, confused. Jason finally looked up from his plate, his eyes wide with panic. "I said no." I repeated, my voice as calm and cold as a winter morning. "This is my house. This is Emily's house. Your parents, Alicia, are not moving in here. You are not moving in here. And you are certainly not managing my finances." For a second, there was absolute silence. Alicia's mind was racing. I could see her recalculating. This wasn't part of the plan. The old man was supposed to be weak. He was supposed to cry, to bargain, to be grateful for their help. Jason was the first to break. He shot up from his chair so fast it almost toppled over. His face, which had been pale with cowardice, was now a deep, blotchy red of shame and anger. "You're being selfish!" he screamed. The words hit me harder than any wine glass ever could. Selfish. Me. The man who had quietly paid off his $250,000 gambling debt just last month. The man who had funded his failed startup 5 years ago with a $100,000 loan I never intended to collect. The man who had raised him, clothed him, and given him a life he was now desperately trying to light on fire. I was the one being selfish. Before I could respond, Alicia was on her feet too, her face a mask of pure, unfiltered rage. The facade of the loving daughter-in-law was gone. This was the real woman. The predator. "Selfish!" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the dining room. "You're sitting in this museum alone. You have 3 empty bedrooms upstairs. 3, you only use 1. "Those rooms are not empty," I said, my voice rising to meet hers. "One of them was my son's, the son I used to know. The other 2, I pointed upstairs, belong to my wife. They are her rooms, her sewing room, her library. They are full of her, and you will never set foot in them." "We are his family now," Diana, the mother-in-law, chimed in from the table. "You owe him this. We need a place to live." "Then you should have thought of that before you committed fraud in Florida," I said flatly. Her face went white. She hadn't expected me to know that. How dare you?" Mike sputtered, standing up. "Sit down, Mike," I ordered. And to my surprise, he did. He was a bully, and bullies are cowards. I stood up slowly, placing my napkin on the table. I was done. The experiment was over. The trap had been sprung. "This dinner is over," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. "I want all of you out of my house. Now." Jason looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Dad, wait, please. You don't understand. I need this. You have to help us." "Help you?" I asked. "Help you steal my home. Help you commit me to a nursing home, which was your next step. Help you forge documents to declare me incompetent." "I know the plan, Jason. I've known it for 6 months." His face collapsed. The blood drained from it. He knew that I knew. Alicia, however, was not done. She was trapped. A cornered animal. And cornered animals are the most dangerous. "You can't prove any of that, you old fool," she screamed. "It's our word against yours. Who are they going to believe, a loving family, or a confused, selfish, senile old man who is a danger to himself?" "We'll see," I said, turning my back on them. "This discussion is over." I took one step toward the kitchen to call the police. I never made it. I heard the gasp from Jason. I heard the scrape of the chair. I heard Alicia's final guttural scream of rage. "You can't turn your back on me!" I turned around just in time to see the crystal wine glass, the one filled with expensive Cabernet, flying through the air, aimed directly at my face. I turned my back on them. It was a deliberate final gesture. This discussion is over. I took one step toward the kitchen. My plan was simple: go to the phone, dial 911, and have them removed for trespassing. The legal, clean way. But I never made it to the second step. Behind me, I heard a sound that was not human, a guttural scream of pure, cornered rage. "You can't turn your back on me!" Alicia shrieked. I heard the scrape of her chair on the hardwood floor. I heard Jason's tiny, terrified gasp. "Alicia, no!" I turned slowly. Not fast enough to dodge, but just in time to see it. It seemed to happen in slow motion. The crystal wine glass, the one her father had been critiquing, was in her hand. The dark red Cabernet, the color of blood, sloshed inside it. Her face was a mask of hatred twisted beyond recognition. She wasn't the sophisticated, calculating woman from moments before. She was a wild animal. "You old fool!" she screamed again. And then she threw it. Her arm snapped forward, and the glass flew across the 10 feet that separated us. I watched it tumble end over end, the red liquid catching the light of the chandelier. And in that split second, I made a choice. I could have dodged. I'm 70, but I'm not slow. I saw it coming. I could have turned my head, raised an arm, stepped aside. But I didn't. I stood perfectly still. I needed this. I wanted this. Their plan was to paint me as senile, confused, a danger to myself. An old man's confused stories against the word of a loving, concerned family. It was a risk, but this was not a story. This was evidence. This was assault. This was the final nail. The glass struck my face with a wet, shocking impact. It wasn't the wine that hurt. It was the shattering. The crystal, beautiful and expensive, exploded against my right cheekbone. I felt a sharp electric pain, as if I'd been stung by a dozen hornets. My glasses, the thin wire-rimmed pair Emily had picked out for me, were ripped from my face. I saw them fly off into the periphery and heard them clatter somewhere on the floor. Then came the second wave of sensation. The cold, stinging wine splashing across my face, into my eyes, and down the front of my white shirt. And immediately after, the hot, sudden rush of blood. The sharp rim of the glass, the base perhaps, had caught me high on the cheekbone, just under my eye. It wasn't a scratch. It was a cut. A deep one. I could feel the blood, hot and thick, welling up instantly and beginning to trace a path down my face into my mustache and dripping onto my collar. The room went utterly, profoundly silent. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of my blood onto the polished hardwood floor. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I just looked at them. Alicia stood frozen, her arm still half raised, her mouth open in a perfect O of shock. She hadn't expected to hit me. Or perhaps she hadn't expected me to let her hit me. She was horrified not by what she had done, but by the fact that she had lost control so completely. Her parents, Mike and Diana, were statues. They weren't rushing to help. They weren't screaming in horror. They were just watching. Their faces were pale, their expressions blank. They were calculating. I could see their minds spinning, trying to figure out how this new variable fit into their plan. It didn't. And Jason, my son. He was pressed against the far wall as if he'd been trying to merge with the wallpaper. He was trembling, his hands clamped over his mouth, his eyes wide with a terror that was completely useless. He looked at the blood on my face, then at his wife, then back at me. He said nothing. He did nothing. He just watched his father bleed. In that moment, any last lingering ember of hope I had for him, any microscopic particle of love I still held, died. It turned to ash and blew away. He was not my son. He was just a coward who shared my name. My cheek was throbbing, a deep, agonizing pulse of pain. The wine stung the open wound. I slowly raised my hand, not to my face, but to my shirt pocket, and retrieved the white linen napkin I had placed there. I brought it up to my cheek and pressed it gently against the cut. The fabric turned dark crimson almost instantly. I held it there, and then looking directly into Alicia's terrified eyes, I smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It was just a small lift at the corners of my mouth. But it was the most terrifying smile I have ever produced. It was the smile of a predator that had just watched its prey in a fit of panic impale itself on a stake. Alicia's face crumpled. The blood drained from it. She finally understood. She didn't know how she had lost, but she knew in that instant that the game was over. I let the silence hang for one more second, letting them soak in the image. The old bleeding man smiling. Then I spoke. My voice was calm, clear, and steady, not a trace of pain or fear. "Thank you, Alicia," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "You just completed this for me." Her knees buckled. She grabbed the back of a chair to hold herself up. "What? What does that mean?" I didn't answer her. I turned my gaze to my son, who was still pressed against the wall. "Jason," I said. He flinched as if my voice were a whip. I hope this was all worth it. I turned, walked past the shattered glass and the puddles of wine on the floor, and went to the small table by the entryway. I picked up my car keys. Jason found his voice a pathetic squeak. "Dad, wait. Where are you going?" We can clean this up. We can talk." I opened the front door. The cool night air felt good on my face. "I'm going to the emergency room, son," I said, not looking back. "I'll need a report for the police, you understand." I stepped out onto the porch. But you can't," Alicia screamed from the dining room, her voice hysterical. "You can't. We'll say you fell. We'll say you're crazy." I paused at the top of the steps and looked back through the open door. They were all clustered together now, a pathetic tableau of defeated tyrants. "You can say whatever you want," I called out to them. "But the cameras in that dining room, they don't lie. And they've been recording this entire lovely Easter dinner." I didn't wait to see their faces. I walked down the steps, got into my car, started the engine, and pulled out of the driveway, leaving them all behind, in the house that would never, ever be theirs. I didn't speed. I didn't race through yellow lights. I drove my 10-year-old sedan exactly at the speed limit, signaling for a full 3 seconds before each turn. The blood was a problem. The linen napkin I was pressing against my cheek was already soaked through, and I could feel the cold, sticky wetness seeping between my fingers and dripping onto the steering wheel. I turned on the interior light at a stop sign. I tilted the rearview mirror. The wound was worse than I thought. It was a jagged 3-inch gash starting just below my right eye and running down my cheekbone. It was deep. It was bleeding profusely. It was beautiful. A panicked man would have called 911 from the house. A victim would be hysterical, speeding to the hospital, laying on the horn. I, on the other hand, was calmly obeying all traffic laws. I was not a victim. I was an investigator. And I was on my way to file Exhibit A. I pulled into the ambulance bay at St. Jude's emergency room. I parked neatly, turned off the car, and walked calmly through the automatic doors. The triage nurse, a young woman with tired eyes, looked up from her computer and gasped. "Oh my God, sir. What happened? Did you fall, sir? Sit down." She rushed toward me with a wheelchair. I held up my free hand. "I did not fall, and I am fine to walk." I stood in front of her desk, letting the bright fluorescent lights illuminate my bloody face and my wine-stained shirt. This was the most important part. The first report. "My name," I said, my voice clear and steady, "is Gabriel Foster. My date of birth is October 19th, 1955. At approximately 6:45 p.m. this evening at my primary residence, my daughter-in-law Alicia Foster assaulted me. She threw a crystal wine glass at my face. I am here to be treated, and I need you to notify the hospital police. I wish to file a report. The nurse's face changed. The pity was gone, replaced by professional shock. This was no longer a clumsy old man. This was a crime scene. Of course, Mr. Foster. Immediately. She buzzed me through the doors while simultaneously picking up the phone to page security and the on-call doctor. The chain of custody had begun. I was taken to a private room. A young resident, Dr. Chen, rushed in, his eyes wide. "Mr. Foster, I'm Dr. Chen. Let's get that cleaned up and see what we're dealing with. That looks nasty." He reached toward me with a sterile wipe. I leaned back out of his reach. "Before you touch me, doctor." He froze, confused. "Sir, you're bleeding. I understand that. But before you clean, stitch, or treat this wound in any way, I need photos. High-resolution photos. I need you to document the laceration exactly as it is right now. I also need you to document my shirt. I was told the police are on their way." Dr. Chen looked at the nurse, who nodded. He understood immediately. "Of course, protocol. This is an assault." He turned to the nurse. "Get the kit. Document the wound angle depth and note any potential glass fragments. And take photos of his shirt for the wine splatter pattern." For the next 5 minutes, I sat under the harsh light as the nurse took pictures. Flash, flash, flash. Each flash was another lock clicking shut on the cage I was building for Alicia. This is what you can't argue with. This is what a high-priced lawyer can't spin. A photo of a 70-year-old man in his own home bleeding from a facial wound. They thought I was senile. They thought I was weak. They thought I was finished. They had forgotten what I did for a living for 40 years. I didn't just balance books. I hunted monsters. The kind of monsters who wore expensive suits, who bankrupted companies, and who, it turns out, sometimes even shared your last name. I sat there calm as the doctor finally began to clean the wound. The antiseptic stung a sharp, cleansing fire. "This is deep," he murmured, probing gently. "It's gone right to the bone. You're lucky it missed your eye by an inch. You're going to need stitches, at least 4. 4 is fine," I said. "I don't need it to be pretty." As he worked threading the needle, I thought about Jason. My son. My weak, pathetic son. He had stood there pressed against the wall watching his wife assault his father, and had done nothing. This wasn't just about a house. I had known for 6 months that this was coming. I had been tracking their finances. I saw the $20,000 credit card charges from Alicia. I saw the wire transfers from Jason's account to an offshore gambling site. I knew how he was in the hole for $250,000. I knew his loan shark was getting impatient. And I knew that just last month, Alicia had met with a lawyer specializing in elder law, specifically in geriatric competency hearings. They weren't just planning to ask me for money. They were planning to take it. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent, to seize my assets, and to put me in a home. The attack tonight wasn't the plan. It was a mistake. A glorious, stupid, impulsive mistake born of pure rage. Alicia had lost control, and in doing so she had given me the one thing I couldn't get myself. Irrefutable proof that they were not concerned caregivers. They were violent. They were dangerous. "All right," Dr. Chen said, snipping the last thread. "That should do it. 4 stitches as requested." "Thank you, doctor. Now I need 2 things from you." He was bandaging my cheek. "What's that?" "First, I need a complete, detailed copy of my medical report. I want it to note the time of my arrival. I want it to note my exact statement about my daughter-in-law. I want your professional medical opinion that the wound is consistent with being struck by a shattering glass object at high velocity." The doctor nodded slowly. "I can do that. It's all in the chart. And the second thing, I need a fully itemized bill for this visit. The nurse looked up from her computer. Sir, your Medicare and your supplemental insurance will cover all of this. I am not using insurance, I stated clearly. I am paying for this entire visit out of pocket. Right now. I want a paper trail. I want a receipt showing that I, Gabriel Foster, personally paid for the damages inflicted upon me by Alicia Foster. It took them another 30 minutes to process the paperwork. I waited patiently. I didn't check my phone. I didn't call Ben. I just sat there, a 70-year-old man, with a freshly stitched face, feeling more calm and in control than I had in a year. Finally, the nurse returned with a large envelope. Inside was the detailed report copies of the photographs and the bill stamped across the front in red ink, paid in full. I tucked the envelope securely into the inside pocket of my blazer. As I walked out of the ER, I saw the 2 police officers who had taken my initial statement. They were talking to Ben Carter, who had just arrived. Ben looked at me, his eyes scanning my face, then the bandage. He gave a single slow nod. He understood. Gabe, he said, walking over. Are you all right? I'm perfect, Ben, I said. I patted the envelope in my pocket. Phase 1 is truly complete. Now it's time for Phase 2. Let's go and let them panic. The doctor had finished his work. The nurse handed me the large manila envelope. I could feel the weight of it. The official photographs of my wound. The detailed 8-page medical report. The bill stamped paid in full in aggressive red ink. Exhibit A. My hand was steady as I took it. The adrenaline from the attack had faded, replaced by something else. A cold, quiet, methodical focus. It was a feeling I recognized. It was the feeling I used to get right before a raid, right before we dismantled a decades-long financial conspiracy. The hunt was on. I pulled out my phone. The screen was smeared with my own drying blood from the drive over. How fitting. They thought I was a victim. A victim would be crying. A victim would be calling Jason, begging for an explanation, for an apology. A victim would be weak. I am not a victim. I am an investigator. I opened my secure messaging app, the one Ben Carter had installed 6 months ago. My thumbs, steady as a surgeon's, typed out the message. Ben, Phase 1 is complete. I am at St. Jude ER Room 3. 4 stitches. Wound documented by staff. Photos taken. Medical report secured. Bill paid in full. I hit send. I thought about what they were doing right now back at the house. Were they celebrating, panicked, cleaning the blood off the floor, My blood. I imagined Alicia scrubbing the floor, furious, humiliated. I imagined Jason pacing, wringing his hands, the picture of useless cowardice. I imagined Mike and Diana Russo, the 2 vultures who had started this, already calculating their next move. He said there were cameras. I could almost hear Alicia shrieking. Did he mean it? It didn't matter. Whether they believed me or not, they were trapped. My phone buzzed. Ben. The ER is mandated to report a violent assault. The officers should be there any minute. I am 5 minutes out. Remember the plan, Gabe. Do not press charges. Not yet. I typed back a single letter. Why? Of course I wouldn't press charges. Not yet. That would be far too simple. That would be mercy. Pressing charges now would show my hand. It would mean I was fighting back. No. I needed them to believe I was broken. I needed them to believe I was a terrified old man too scared to do anything. I needed them to get comfortable. I needed them to get arrogant. I needed them to make more mistakes. The curtain to my ER room slid open with a rattle of plastic rings. 2 uniformed officers stepped in. One was older Officer Riley with a gray mustache and the exhausted, cynical eyes of a man who had seen everything. The other was younger Officer Chen, alert with a notepad already in his hand. Mr. Gabriel Foster, Officer Riley asked. His voice was a low rumble. I adopted the mask. I slumped my shoulders. I looked down at my hands. I let my voice tremble just a little. Yes, that's me. We received a call from the triage nurse, Officer Chen said, his eyes scanning my bandaged face. She stated you reported an assault, that you were struck in the face with a glass object. I nodded, not meeting his gaze. Yes, but it was a misunderstanding, a family argument. It got out of hand. Officer Riley let out a heavy sigh. He had seen this 1,000 times. The victim already making excuses for the abuser. Sir, this, he pointed to my face, is not a misunderstanding. The doctor's report states laceration to the bone consistent with high-velocity impact from a weaponized object. Sir, we need you to tell us exactly what happened. Who did this to you? I took a shaky breath. It was my daughter-in-law, Alicia Foster. Your daughter-in-law, Riley repeated, writing it down. And what was the argument about? Just family things, I whispered. She's been under a lot of stress. Her parents are visiting. I don't think she meant to do it. She just snapped. She didn't mean it. My internal voice was sharp, sarcastic. She didn't mean to scream that I was a selfish old fool. She didn't mean to demand my house. She didn't mean to throw a 1-pound chunk of crystal at my eye. Oh, she meant it. She had just failed to finish the job. Mr. Foster, Officer Riley said, his tone softening with a frustration I recognized. The frustration of dealing with a victim who won't save himself. Sir, in our experience, when someone snaps like this, it's not the first time. And it won't be the last. This is a very serious assault. We can go to the house right now and arrest Alicia Foster. He leaned in a little. Sir, do you wish to press charges? This was it. The pivot. The single most important moment of Phase 2. I looked at him, my eyes wide with what I hoped looked like pure, unadulterated terror. I let a tear well up. Press charges, I whispered, as if the concept was foreign. Against Alicia, my son's wife. Yes, sir, it's your right. We can issue an emergency protective order. Get her out of the house. I started to shake my head slowly at first, then more vigorously. No, I can't do that. Please. Sir, Officer Chen interjected gently. She could have blinded you. If you don't do this, you are telling her that what she did was acceptable. You don't understand, I pleaded, my voice cracking. She's my family. Jason, my son. It would destroy him. And where would I go? I live in that house. If I do this, they'll kick me out. I'm 70 years old. I'm an old man. I have nowhere else to go. Please, just let it go. I put my face in my hands, a perfect imitation of a defeated man. I had laid it on thick. The poor, terrified, dependent old man, the very role they had been trying to force me into for 6 months. Now I would wrap myself in it like a shroud. Riley and Chen exchanged a look of pure, unadulterated frustration. They saw a classic, tragic case of elder abuse, a victim too institutionalized, too frightened, too weak to fight back. Sir, Riley said, his voice hardening, we can't force you to press charges, but you cannot go back to that house tonight. It is not a safe environment. Do you have a friend, a relative, someone who can take you in? Before I could answer, a new voice cut through the room. He does. Ben Carter walked in. He wasn't dressed like a flashy lawyer. He was dressed like my lawyer. An old-school 3-piece wool suit, an understated tie, and a briefcase that probably cost more than my car. He radiated the kind of quiet authority that makes police officers straighten their spines. Officers, thank you for your time. I'm Ben Carter. I'm Mr. Foster's attorney. Riley and Chen immediately stood a little straighter. This was no longer a simple domestic dispute. Ben walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. I kept my head down, playing my part. Gabe, are you all right? I came as soon as I heard. Ben, I whispered, my voice thick with fake emotion. They want me to arrest Alicia. I can't. Ben, I can't. It's family. It's Jason's wife. Ben patted my back. It's all right, Gabe. You're in shock. You don't have to decide anything right now. He turned to the police. His tone was now crisp, professional. Officers, my client is clearly traumatized and not in a state to make any decisions regarding prosecution. He is also, as you noted, not safe in his own home this evening. He will be staying with me at an undisclosed location until we can sort this matter out. I will be handling all his communications from this point forward. Officer Riley nodded clearly, relieved to be passing this mess off to a high-priced lawyer. Very well, counselor. That's a good plan. He handed me a small pamphlet. Sir, here are some resources for victims of domestic violence. Please, for your own sake, read it and reconsider. People like this, they don't stop. They only escalate. Thank you, officer, I murmured, taking the pamphlet with a trembling hand. Thank you for your kindness. They left. The moment the curtain slid shut, I stopped shaking. I straightened my back. I wiped the fake tears from my eyes and looked up at Ben. The weary, terrified old man was gone. Gabriel Foster, the investigator, was back. Did they buy it? I asked, my voice flat and cold. Ben allowed himself a small, thin smile. Hook, line, and sinker. They think you're a terrified old man who is too scared to act. Perfect, I said. I stood up, buttoning my blazer, the manila envelope clutched in my hand. By now, I said, looking at my watch. Officer Riley has probably called the house just to check on the situation. He'll tell them I'm not pressing charges. He'll tell them I'm in shock and staying with a friend. Ben nodded, picking up my small overnight bag. Alicia will think she's won. She'll think you're weak. She'll think she's gotten away with it, I corrected him. She'll think the senile old man is running scared, and when people like her think they've won, they get sloppy. They get arrogant. I walked toward the exit, the bandage on my cheek pulling tight. Let's go to the penthouse, Ben. It's time to listen in on their panic. It's time for Phase 2. The automatic doors of the St. Jude emergency room hissed shut behind us. The cool night air felt electric against the fresh, tight stitches in my cheek. Officer Riley and Officer Chen were getting into their patrol car, no doubt, heading to my house to check on the situation exactly as I had planned. They would arrive, see the broken glass, and find a hysterical Alicia and a confused Jason who would feed them the exact story about me being senile and a danger to myself. They would buy it. They would see the officer's visit as a validation of their lie, not a warning. Ben Carter held the passenger door of his black Mercedes open for me. It was not a flashy car, but it was the kind of solid six-figure machine that speaks of old money and absolute power. I got in. The door closed with a heavy, satisfying thud, sealing me inside a quiet, leather-scented sanctuary. They bought the whole act, Gabe, Ben said, as he slid into the driver's seat and pulled smoothly away from the curb. His voice was no longer the worried tone of a friend. It was the crisp, analytical voice of my lawyer. Of course they did, I said. I unbuttoned my blazer and carefully placed the manila envelope now containing Exhibit A on my lap. It's the story they're trained to see. A weak, terrified old man too dependent on his abusive family to fight back. They see it every single day. I just gave them a perfect textbook example. Your performance was convincing, Ben noted. The trembling hands, the tear. I almost believed it myself. It wasn't all an act, I admitted, touching the bandage on my cheek. The anesthetic was beginning to wear off, and a dull, heavy ache was setting in. But it was necessary. You and I, Ben, we know how these things go. If I had pressed charges tonight, this would have become a simple he said, she said domestic dispute. A misdemeanor assault. Alicia would get a fine, maybe some anger management classes. Ben nodded, his eyes on the road. And in court, they would have used it against you. They would have argued that you provoked her, that you're an unstable, aggressive old man. They would have used your own police report as fuel for their competency hearing. Exactly. I said, the word coming out as a low growl. They were already building that case. This wasn't just about a few empty bedrooms, Ben. This was never about Easter dinner. This was about money. It's always about money. I turned to look at him as we drove through the dark, quiet streets. They had a plan, a 3-step plan. I've been watching them put it together for 6 months. Ben just listened. He knew most of it, but he needed to hear my final analysis. Step 1, I said, holding up a finger. Isolate me. They've been doing it for a year, suggesting my friends are a bad influence, forgetting to pass on messages. Tonight they were trying to install Alicia's parents in my house as permanent 24-hour guards. Step 2, I continued, was to get me declared incompetent. Alicia already met with a lawyer, a bottom feeder named Dr. Miles, who specializes in geriatric evaluations. They were going to start a paper trail. The sudden fall at the house, the confusion, the forgetfulness. Tonight's visit from the police, where they would claim I was the one who was confused and violent, was meant to be the cornerstone of that file. And step 3, Ben finished for me, seize the assets. Once you're declared incompetent, they get power of attorney, sell the house, and drain every account you have. Every account they know about, I corrected him, which is just the house and my local pension account. They're amateurs. They're greedy, stupid, and desperate. Ben turned onto the freeway, the car accelerating with a smooth, powerful hum. How desperate, Gabe! You saw the reports. You know the numbers. I know them by heart, I said, closing my eyes, reciting the facts. My son Jason is in debt for $250,000 to a loan shark in Miami, a man who doesn't accept late payments. Jason has been gambling his life away for a year, and the deadline to pay is next Friday. And the daughter-in-law, Ben prompted. Alicia is worse. She's not just weak like Jason. She's malignant. She's been embezzling from her employer. $50,000 over the last quarter. They're doing an audit next week. She knows she's going to be caught. She's a rat in a trap, and she'll do anything to get out. Ben whistled softly. So this isn't just about greed. It's about survival. They're not just trying to get rich. They're trying to avoid prison or a pair of broken legs. Which is why I couldn't just cut them off, I explained. Desperate people don't just go away. They escalate. If I had simply refused their request tonight, what would have happened next week? A mysterious fire in my house, a tragic fall down the stairs that actually does kill me, no. I couldn't let them control the narrative or the timeline. I tapped the envelope on my lap. Tonight, Alicia lost control. She escalated in the most idiotic, public, and provable way possible. She didn't just snap. She handed me the weapon I needed to end this on my terms. She thinks I'm a confused old man who ran to a friend's house, I said. She thinks I'm sitting in your guest room right now crying into a cup of tea. She thinks she has time. She'll wake up tomorrow, call Dr. Miles, and accelerate her plan to have me committed using my flight as proof of my instability. Ben smiled. When in reality you're at the Four Seasons penthouse suite drinking single malt scotch and watching a live feed from every camera in your house. Exactly, I said as the gleaming tower of the hotel came into view. She thinks I'm a danger to myself. The truth is, I'm a danger to her. The police report is filed. The medical evidence is secure. My legal team is on alert. And the targets have no idea they're already in the crosshairs. Ben pulled the car into the private underground garage, a guard nodding at him as we passed. Gabe, Ben said, putting the car in park. You know I paid off Jason's gambling debt. You know I gave him a clean slate a month ago. He didn't have to do this. He had a way out. I know, Ben, I said, my voice heavy for the first time. He had a clean slate. He was free. The $250,000 was gone. He could have confessed. He could have started over. I opened the car door and stepped out the sterile garage air feeling cold. But he didn't. He didn't want a clean slate. He wanted more. He wanted the house. He wanted Alicia. He wanted the easy life he thought I owed him. He saw my generosity not as a gift, but as a weakness to be exploited. I looked at my old friend. Tonight wasn't just about stopping a crime, Ben. It was about confirming a tragedy. My son is gone. And that's a wound no doctor can stitch up. I adjusted my blazer, the blood-stained shirt hidden beneath it. Let's go upstairs. I want to be watching when they get home from the police station. The panic should be just about setting in. Ben Carter's Mercedes was silent as a tomb as we sliced through the city. He didn't speak, he just drove. He understood that I needed these moments to transition from the wounded old man in the ER to the man I was now the man I had always been. I did not go home. Going home was what they expected. It was what a victim would do. I was doing the exact opposite. 20 minutes later, we weren't in a guest room at Ben's house. We were in the private elevator of the Four Seasons, ascending to the penthouse suite. The one Ben's firm kept for high-profile clients who needed absolute discretion. The doors opened onto a sprawling space of glass and dark wood with a panoramic view of the city lights. It was the kind of place Alicia and Jason dreamed of, the kind of place they were willing to kill for. And it had been my secret office for the last 6 months. Ben walked to the wet bar and poured 2 glasses of scotch. He handed one to me. "Phase 2, he said, raising his glass. "To phase 2, I replied, the expensive liquor barely registering a burn. I walked over to the desk, took out my personal cell phone, the one Jason and Alicia knew about, and looked at the screen. 14 missed calls, all from Jason. I powered it off. Click. The senile old man was now officially missing. The line was cut. They were alone with what they had done. I then picked up a different phone, a secure satellite phone, and dialed a number. "Activate the house feeds," I said. Across the room, a large television screen flickered to life, splitting into 6 different high-definition views. My dining room, my living room, the front porch, the upstairs hallway, my office. And there they were. The camera in the dining room showed a scene of absolute chaos. My blood was a dark stain on the hardwood floor. Shards of crystal were everywhere. Alicia was pacing her hands in her hair, her expensive dress stained with my blood and her wine. "He said cameras!" She was shrieking. Her voice came through the audio feed crystal clear. "Where are the cameras? Jason, did you see any cameras?" Jason was slumped in a chair, his head in his hands. I don't know. He was just talking. Maybe he was bluffing. Old people bluff. He went to the ER, you idiot!" Mike Russo shouted, his face purple. "He's talking to police right now. You assaulted him, you stupid, impulsive girl." "Me?" Alicia spun on him. "You were the one pushing this. Get the house, Alicia. Get the money?" "Shut up, all of you," Diana screamed. "Someone's coming." I watched on the monitor as headlights swept across the living room window. A police patrol car. Right on cue. I sipped my scotch. "Showtime," I murmured. We watched as Jason and Alicia scrambled to compose themselves. Alicia wiped her face, trying to look like a concerned, crying wife. Jason ran to the door. The porch camera showed Officer Riley and Officer Chen, the same 2 men I had just spoken to. "Mr. Foster?" Riley asked. "Yes, officer, thank God you're here," Jason said, his voice a pathetic whine. "It's my father. We're so worried." "We've already met your father, sir. At the hospital. He's being treated for a severe facial laceration." I watched Alicia appear behind Jason, her eyes red, her hands clasped. "Oh, thank heavens, he's safe. Did he tell you what happened? He fell. He tripped on the rug. He was holding his wine glass and he fell right on it." And the lie was so blatant, so perfectly delivered. I had to give her credit. "Ma'am," Officer Riley said, his voice flat. "That's not what he told us. He told us you threw the glass at him." Alicia burst into perfectly timed tears. He what? How could he say that? Officer, you have to understand. He's sick. He's been so confused lately. He's 70 years old. He forgets things. He gets angry. He says things that don't make sense. We've been trying to get him help." Jason jumped in, nodding vigorously. "It's true, officer. He's been paranoid. He's a danger to himself. We're his only family, and we're just trying to take care of him. We would never ever hurt him." I looked at Ben. He was smiling. "And there it is, Huss," Ben said quietly. "They've just lied to 2 police officers. They've officially filed a false report. And they've confirmed their entire strategy on a police body cam." On the screen, Officer Riley looked skeptical, but he was just a patrolman. "He refused to press charges, ma'am. He said he was scared and was going to stay with a friend." Alicia's face registered a flash of pure triumph. Scared. He was scared of her. "Oh, the poor man," she sobbed. "He's just so confused. Thank you for telling us, officer. We'll try to find him. We just want him to be safe." The officers left. Jason closed the door. Alicia's tears stopped instantly. She turned to Jason, her eyes blazing. "He's running. The old fool is running scared. Find out which friend he's with. And call Dr. Miles now. We're accelerating the timeline." I settled into the deep leather armchair, the penthouse suite silent around me, the glass of 12-year-old scotch cool in my hand. Across the room, the 60-inch screen glowed, split into 6 feeds, a perfect high-definition view of the battlefield I had just fled. The audio from the dining room microphone was so clear I could hear the ice melting in the glasses they had abandoned. Ben Carter had just left, satisfied with the night's work. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time to watch. On the monitor, I saw the blue and red lights of the patrol car flash across my living room windows, then disappear as Officer Riley and Officer Chen drove away. The moment my front door clicked shut, the silence in that house was broken. Alicia, who had been a picture of tearful, victimized concern for the police, transformed. Her face pale and angelic for the officers turned into a mask of pure reptilian rage. I watched her spin around and shove Jason hard against the wall. "He called the cops!" She shrieked, her voice a low, vicious hiss. "He called the cops, Jason, on me. He's not scared. He's not confused. He's fighting back." Jason, my son, just rubbed his shoulder, his eyes wide with a terror I recognized. But it wasn't terror of me. It was of her. "Alicia, what do we do? What do we do now? He's gone. He's with that lawyer. They believed us right. They believed the senile story." "It doesn't matter what they believed," she spat, pacing back and forth, her bloody wineglass still clutched in her hand. "He has that cut on his face. He has a report. He's building a case, you idiot. We're done." "No," Jason said, his voice shaking. "No, we're not done. We just have to move faster, that's all. Faster." Alicia stopped pacing. She looked at him. "Faster? How?" "We accelerate," Jason said, his voice gaining a desperate, thin strength. "We were going to do this slowly. We were going to build the incompetency case over weeks. We don't have weeks. We have hours. We have to make sure that by tomorrow morning, he is the crazy one, not us." He pointed a shaking finger at the phone. "Call Dr. Miles, now." Alicia stared at him, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. "Dr. Miles, but we're not supposed to use him unless it's a real emergency." "This is a real emergency," Jason yelled. "The old man is on the loose with a lawyer. We have to establish the narrative first. We have to make sure that when he does talk, everyone already thinks he's insane. Call him." I leaned forward in my chair, sipping my scotch. "Dr. Miles." The quack doctor from Palm Beach, the one whose license was under review for overprescribing opioids. My investigator had flagged him 3 months ago. Of course, that's who they would use. I watched on the monitor as Alicia took a deep, shuddering breath. She composed her face, pinching her own cheeks to make them red, rubbing her eyes until they were raw. And then she dialed. When she spoke, her voice was a masterpiece of manufactured hysteria. "Dr. Miles, oh, thank God you answered." She was sobbing. It was a perfect performance. "It's Alicia Foster. We spoke last week. About my father-in-law, Gabriel." She paused, listening. It's so much worse than we thought. He's had a complete psychotic break. He got violent. He threw his wine glass against the wall and he fell on it." I almost choked on my drink. "He fell on it. Brilliant." "Yes. He cut his face. He's bleeding. We tried to help him. We tried to calm him down, but he hit me, doctor. He hit me and then he ran away." She was building her own counter-assault charge. Smart, but not smart enough. "He's missing," she cried into the phone. "He's 70 years old, he's bleeding, he's confused, and he's out there alone. We're terrified he's going to hurt himself or someone else." Yes, we need you to file the paperwork. The emergency competency hearing, the psychiatric hold, immediately. We'll pay, of course, we'll pay your full fee. Double. Just, please find him. Get him into a secure facility where he can't hurt himself." She hung up the phone. The tears stopped instantly. Her face was cold calm. "Done," she said to Jason. "The petition will be filed in the morning. Now when the police do find him, he won't be a victim. He'll be a missing at-risk senior. They'll drag him straight to a psych hold. Now the money." Mike and Diana Russo, who had been silently watching from the corner, like two vultures, finally spoke. "That's smart, honey," Diana said. "But what about the money? We're still broke? The hotel?" "Jason," Alicia ordered. "Call the bank. Now. Freeze his accounts. Tell them he's missing and mentally incompetent. Tell them he's probably being taken advantage of by that friend the police mentioned. We can't let him spend our money while he's having an episode." Our money. The sheer breathtaking audacity of it. I watched Jason, my son, pull out his phone. He was trembling, but he dialed. He was a puppet, and she was pulling every string. "Yes, hello, my name is Jason Foster. I'm calling about my father's account. Gabriel Foster. Account number." He rattled off the number I had given him when he was 21, the one for his college expenses. The allowance account. The decoy. I need to report an emergency," he stammered. "My father is mentally unwell. He's had a breakdown. He's missing. You need to freeze his accounts immediately. He's not in his right mind." Jason paused, listening. I could see the confusion on his face. What do you mean you can't discuss the account with me?" He listened again, his face going from pale to a sickly green. "No, that's not possible. What do you mean he was just there? He's missing, I just told you." Another long, agonizing pause. Jason looked like he was going to be sick. A trust. What trust? What are you talking about? What do you mean the account is empty? Where did the money go? You have to tell me." He was yelling now, pure panic in his voice. "What do you mean I'm not an authorized party? I am his son. I am his only." He stopped. He listened for one final terrible moment. Then he slowly lowered the phone from his ear. He didn't hang up. He just let his arm drop to his side. "Jason," Alicia asked, her voice sharp. "Jason, what is it?" He turned to look at her, his eyes dead. He knew. Jason whispered the words barely audible. "He knew we were coming. The bank manager. David. He said my father was in this morning. He said he moved all his assets into a private trust. He said, the account is empty. There's nothing left. It's all gone. I watched the four of them on the porch camera. They looked like a pack of stray dogs, wet, desperate, and dangerous. Jason, my son, was shaking his face a sickly pale gray under the porch light. Alicia, his wife, was vibrating with a rage so intense I could practically feel it through the screen. Her parents, Mike and Diana Russo, just looked defeated, their brief fantasy of inheriting my life collapsing around them. The loan sharks. Jason must have gotten the call. The final call. The one where they stop asking politely. "They're coming, Alicia!" I heard Jason stammer, his voice captured perfectly by the microphone I'd installed in the porch light fixture 6 months ago. They're not going to wait. They said tonight." Alicia's head snapped toward him. "Then we're not waiting either. He's not here. He's hiding at his lawyer's house like a coward. He abandoned the house. We have to get in, now." "Get in," Mike Russo said, his voice a pathetic squeak. "The police were just here. The old man has lawyers." "He's an old man," Alicia shrieked, her voice cracking. "He's senile. He's not thinking straight. He has cash in there. I know it. Or jewelry. Or the real bank documents. The trust. It has to be in the house. He wouldn't just leave it." She was right about one thing. I wouldn't. She grabbed Jason by the shirt. "Your key. The one to the front door. You still have it." Jason looked horrified. "Alicia, no. That's breaking and entering. That's a felony." "It's not a felony if it's your house," she screamed. "And it will be your house. He's your father. He's just confused. We're just going inside to wait for him to make sure he's safe. Now open the damn door, Jason, or I swear I will break a window." I sat back in the leather chair in the penthouse suite, a glass of scotch swirling in my hand. I watched my son, my 45-year-old son, the man I had taught to fish, and to tell the truth, make his final choice. He trembled. He looked at his wife, at his desperate in-laws, and then at the door to my house. The house he grew up in. The house his mother died in. He pulled the keys from his pocket. "He didn't even change the locks." Alicia muttered, a note of triumphant contempt in her voice. "He is stupid. He is senile. He ran away." "Oh, Alicia. My dear, stupid Alicia. I hadn't changed the locks because I wanted you to come back. I needed you to. An assault charge can be argued. It's messy. But felony breaking and entering. While I'm not here, with intent to steal. That, my dear, is what we in the business call a clean bust." I watched on the foyer camera, camera 1, as Jason's shaking hand fumbled with the key. It took him 3 tries to get the deadbolt to turn. Click. The door swung open. They didn't hesitate. They poured into my foyer like seawater into a sinking ship. They stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, their eyes darting around the dark, silent house. They were in. They had crossed the line. "Okay." Alicia immediately took charge, her voice a low, urgent hiss. "Here's the plan. Jason, you check the living room. Look for a floor safe, anything. Behind the paintings, under the rugs. Dad, you and Mom, go upstairs. Go through everything. The attic, the closets under the mattresses, especially the master bedroom. That's where he slept with Emily. That's where the most valuable stuff will be." My blood went cold. The master bedroom, Emily's room. I switched the main monitor to camera 4, the one in the upstairs hallway. I watched as Mike and Diana Russo, 2 greedy, bankrupt parasites, took the stairs 2 at a time. They didn't knock. They didn't show an ounce of respect. They shoved open the door to the master bedroom, my bedroom. Emily's sanctuary, and flicked on the lights. I hit the zoom. I watched Diana Russo, a woman who hadn't worked an honest day in her life, walk straight to Emily's antique wardrobe. She pulled the doors open and plunged her hands into the neatly folded sweaters Emily's sister had packed away after the funeral. She pulled them out, sniffed them with disgust, and threw them onto the floor. "Nothing." Just worthless, moth-eaten old lady clothes. Mike was more methodical. He went straight to Emily's nightstand, the one where she kept her reading glasses and her book of poetry. He pulled the drawer out completely, dumping its contents onto the carpet. Loose change, a dried rose, a bottle of prescription pills from 10 years ago. Just junk pills and junk, he growled. Check under the mattress, Alicia screamed from downstairs, her voice echoing up the stairwell. I had to watch. I owed it to Emily to be a witness to this final desecration. I watched this man, this stranger, put his grimy, sweaty hands on the bed where my wife took her last breath. He and Diana grunted as they lifted the heavy king-sized mattress, tilting it on its side. Nothing. Just a box spring. Where does he keep it? They were animals. Sniffing, tearing, digging. They stormed out and went into the room that had been Jason's, flipping the mattress there. Then they went into Emily's sewing room. I watched in cold fury as Diana upturned bins of fabric and thread, searching for a hidden safe that wasn't there. This was the part that hurt. The rest was business. This was personal, and they would pay for every second of it. Every frame was being recorded, streamed directly to a secure server that Ben Carter was monitoring in real time. I stood in the darkness of the reinforced reading room, the room my late wife Emily always called the bunker. On the wall of monitors, I watched my life being torn apart. Camera 4 upstairs showed Diana Russo emptying Emily's jewelry box onto the bed, her hands moving fast, pocketing a pair of pearl earrings that had been my grandmother's. Camera 3 in my office showed Alicia. She was on her hands and knees in front of the wall safe, pounding her fists against the steel. Think, Jason, think, she was shrieking, her voice tinny through the microphone. What's the code? His anniversary. June 21st. Beep, beep, beep. The small red light on the keypad flashed. Access denied. Jason was just standing behind her, wringing his hands, the picture of a useless coward. I don't know, Alicia. I don't know. Try his birthday, October 19th. Beep, beep, beep. Access denied. You useless idiot, she screamed. She was crying now, not tears of sadness, but of pure, greedy frustration. It's all in there and we can't get it. He's won. The old fool has won. I looked at Ben Carter, who was standing next to me in the dark. Beside him stood two men in suits, Detective Miller and Detective Sanchez. They had been waiting patiently with me for the last 20 minutes, watching this entire home invasion unfold. I think, I whispered to Miller, we have established intent. Miller gave a grim nod. I leaned forward to the small broadcast-quality microphone on the console. It was time. I pressed the button, and my voice, calm and amplified, filled the office just outside our hidden door. It's Emily's birthday, Alicia. Alicia froze. Her head snapped up. Jason stopped breathing. The code is 0814, August 14th, the day you never bothered to remember. A sound came out of Alicia, a high-pitched animal scream of pure terror. She scrambled backward, falling over the pile of my first edition books she had thrown to the floor. Who's there? Who said that? Jason was white as a sheet. Dad, is that the intercom? He's watching us, Mike Russo bellowed from the upstairs hallway. I saw him on camera 4, frozen, his hand still inside Emily's antique armoire. He's in the walls. It's a trap. It was always a trap, Mike, I said, my voice now booming through the entire house, through speakers in every room. From the moment you accepted the invitation, what did you think this was, an inheritance? From the monitors I saw them all bolt. Mike and Diana clattered down the stairs, shoving past each other. Jason and Alicia scrambled out of the office. They all converged on the front foyer, a tangled mess of panicked limbs clawing at the front door. Jason grabbed the deadbolt. He twisted it. It didn't budge. He twisted it again. Click, click, click. It's stuck, he yelled, rattling the handle. It won't turn. It's not stuck, Jason, my voice echoed around them. It's a 1.5-inch steel bolt tied directly to the security system. It's a magnetic lock, and I just activated it. You're not going anywhere. They were sealed inside. My mice, in my maze. I looked at Ben. I looked at the detectives. I nodded. Gentlemen, shall we? I pressed a button on the security panel, and the wall panel disguised as a mahogany bookcase slid open with a heavy pneumatic hiss. The four of them were huddled by the front door like frightened animals staring as the wall itself opened. I stepped out into the hallway first, bathed in the light. Ben Carter stepped out beside me, his briefcase in hand. Detective Miller and Detective Sanchez stepped out behind us, their badges clearly visible, their hands resting calmly on their belts. "Hello, family," I said. Jason made a small choking sound. "Dad, you were here. The whole time, the hotel. I let out a small laugh. "The Four Seasons. Oh, that was just a reservation, son. A digital breadcrumb for you to follow, to make you believe I was running scared. You thought I'd run, you thought I'd hide." I took a step closer. They flinched. I wasn't hiding, Jason. I was waiting. I was waiting right here in my wife's reading room. The room you all thought was just a closet. I needed you here. I needed you to cross this threshold on your own. I needed you to commit a felony. And you did. All of you. Magnificently. Mike Russo, the blustering coward, puffed up his chest, a pathetic attempt at authority. "Now hold on, we're family. We were worried. We came to check on you. We thought you were missing." "Jason has a key. This is a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," Detective Miller said, his voice like gravel. He stepped past me. "Is that what you call this?" He held up a small evidence bag. "My colleague who has been upstairs found this in your pocket, Mrs. Russo." Diana Russo let out a small squeak, and her hands flew to her coat, where Emily's pearl earrings used to be. "You were worried," Miller continued. "So you decided to help yourself to the family heirlooms, and you, sir," he looked at Mike. "Were you worried when you were trying to pry the back off the paintings in the master bedroom?" Ben Carter stepped forward, holding a thick legal document. "Jason Foster, Alicia Foster, Mike Russo, Diana Russo." His voice was the one he used in depositions, the one that meant the fight was already over. It was the voice of pure, inevitable consequence. "You are all under arrest for felony breaking and entering, attempted grand larceny, and conspiracy to commit fraud." "Fraud!" Alicia shrieked, finding her voice. "You can't prove that. We were just... Alicia." I interrupted, my voice quiet but cutting through her hysteria. "We have you on audio recorded for the last 6 months, planning to have me declared incompetent. We have the recordings of your phone calls to Dr. Miles arranging for a fraudulent medical certification. We have the records of your $50,000 embezzlement. We have the records of Jason's $250,000 gambling debt." I paused, letting the weight of the words settle on them. I then turned my full attention to my daughter-in-law. Ben cleared his throat. "Oh, and Alicia Foster, you have an additional very serious charge. Assault with a deadly weapon, level 2, for this." I raised my hand and slowly, deliberately pointed to the fresh, dark stitches on my right cheek, the badge of honor she had given me just hours before. "The district attorney is very interested in that one, especially since you lied about it to 2 uniformed police officers claiming I was the one who was violent. That, my dear, adds filing a false police report to your rapidly growing list of problems." Alicia looked at the stitches. She looked at the detectives. She looked at me. And in that moment, she finally truly understood. She had never been in control. She was just a greedy, desperate amateur who had walked right into a trap set by a professional. Her entire world built on lies and arrogance had just evaporated. Detective Miller was professional. He didn't raise his voice. He simply took out the handcuffs. "Jason Foster, you are under arrest. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." It was the sound of the metal, the sharp, cold click-clack of the handcuffs that finally broke my son. His knees buckled. He didn't just kneel. He collapsed, all the strings cut, folding in on himself in a pathetic heap by the front door. "No, no, no, please." He sobbed, a raw animal sound of pure terror. "Please, you don't understand." Detective Sanchez, who was cuffing Alicia, didn't even blink. "You can tell us all about it downtown, sir." "You don't understand!" Jason screamed, his voice cracking. He wasn't talking to me. He wasn't talking to his wife. He was pleading with the detectives, his last hope. She made me. I didn't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice," Miller said, pulling Jason's hands back. "No, I didn't." Jason's confession spilled out, in a desperate, ugly rush, the words tumbling over each other. "I owe money, okay, a lot of money, $250,000. They're not bankers. They're from Miami. They're going to kill me. They told me I had until Friday. They're going to kill me." He was weeping openly now, snot and tears running down his face. This wasn't about greed. This was about my life. I had to get the money. Don't you see? I had to." Alicia, who was being pulled to her feet by the other detective, just stared at him. "You what?" Mike and Diana Russo, cuffed and lined up against the wall, looked horrified. They didn't care about our family drama, but they knew what kind of men Jason was talking about. Jason was still on his knees, looking up at Miller like he was a god. "Please, you have to protect me. You can't let them send me to jail. They'll find me. They'll kill me." I had been silent this whole time, just watching this final pathetic unraveling. I had given him so many opportunities to be a man, and this is what he chose. I let out a small sigh. The sound cut through his sobbing. "No, Jason," I said, my voice quiet. "They won't kill you." He froze. His head snapped up, his tear-filled eyes finally meeting mine. His entire body was trembling. What did you say?" I repeated, walking one step closer. "They are not going to kill you. The men from Miami. The loan sharks. Your $250,000 problem. It's gone." Jason just stared at me, his mouth half open, not comprehending. What do you mean it's gone?" I looked at him, my son, this 45-year-old stranger kneeling in my foyer in handcuffs. And I delivered the final fatal blow. "I said, my voice flat and devoid of all emotion, that I paid it. I paid it all, the full $250,000. I wired the money anonymously from an offshore account. Your debt was cleared 1 week ago." The color didn't just drain from his face. It was as if his entire soul had been vacuumed out of his body. He stopped trembling. He just stopped. He knelt there, paralyzed, a hollow shell. The detectives paused, holding him, sensing this was something more than a simple arrest. Alicia let out a strangled gasp. You paid it a week ago." "Yes," I said, never taking my eyes off Jason. "I did. I've known about his debt for 6 months, Alicia. I've known about your embezzlement. I've known about your parents' fraudulent bankruptcy. I've known everything." Jason's eyes were searching mine, desperate for an answer he couldn't grasp. But if you paid it, why this?" I knelt down just once to be on his level, to look him in the eye as a father one last time. "Because I was testing you, son." I whispered, my voice thick with a sadness so profound it almost choked me. "I cleared your debt. I gave you a clean slate. I wiped away your single biggest, most terrifying problem. I gave you your life back, free and clear." I could see that the dawning catastrophic horror in his eyes as he finally understood. I wanted to see what you would do with it, I continued. I wanted to see what kind of man you really were. Would you come to me humbled and confess? Would you apologize? Would you take this second chance and try to rebuild your life to be a better husband, a better son? I stood up slowly, my old knees cracking. I gave you a miracle, Jason. I gave you a way out. And what did you do? I pointed to my bandaged, stitched-up cheek. You had a clean slate, and you chose this. You chose her. You chose to break into my home, to rip apart my wife's memory, and to attack me, for money you didn't even need anymore. I watched the last light in my son's eyes go out. He understood. It wasn't just a trap. It was a test. And he had failed it in the most spectacular, damning way possible. Get him out of my house, I said to the detective, turning my back on him for the last time. Detective Miller pulled Jason to his feet. He was a dead weight, a sack of shame and terror. He just kept muttering it over and over. He paid it, a week ago. He was broken, but Alicia was not. She was made of something different, something sharp and hard and venomous. As Detective Sanchez cuffed her hands behind her back, she wasn't crying. Her mind was working. I could see her eyes, dark and furious, darting around the foyer. She was calculating. She was searching for one last move, one last piece on the board she could play. And then she found it. She stopped struggling. She looked at me and a slow, ugly, sneering smile spread across her face. You think you're so smart, don't you, old man? She hissed, her voice full of gravel. I didn't answer. I just held her gaze. So you paid his debt, so what? She spat, her chin jutting forward. You can't kick us out. You can't take this away from us. With her cuffed hands, she motioned her head toward the house itself. This house, this property, Jason is your son. He is your only blood. He has rights. Jason, hearing his name, looked up from his stupor. A pathetic, desperate flicker of hope lit his dead eyes. Dad, the house. She's right. I'm your son. Alicia saw the opening and lunged, pulling against the detective's grip. We'll see you in court, Gabe. We'll sue for it. We'll tie you up in litigation until you're dead. A son has a right to his father's property. You can't just disinherit him. We'll take this house and we will sell it, and you will have nothing. She was screaming now, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged foyer. It was her last desperate gamble. She truly believed that in the end the law would reward her husband's bloodline. That's when Ben Carter, who had been watching this all unfold with a kind of clinical detachment, stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply adjusted his cufflink. Actually, Mrs. Foster, he said, his voice cutting through her hysteria with the clean, cold precision of a surgeon's scalpel. He does not. Alicia froze. What? He has no rights. Ben continued, opening his briefcase. Legally speaking, Jason Foster has about as much claim to this property as I do, which is to say, none at all. What are you talking about? Alicia shrieked, looking wildly at Jason, then back at Ben. He's his son. He was my son, I said, my voice quiet. But he made a choice 5 years ago. I walked past the detectives. I walked to the wall safe in my office, the one Alicia had been pounding on just minutes before. My hands were steady. I entered the code. 0814. Emily's birthday. The date my daughter-in-law, in her infinite greed, had never bothered to learn. The safe beeped, and the heavy steel door swung open. Alicia and Mike Russo gasped, their eyes wide. They thought it was full of gold, of cash, of bearer bonds. I reached inside. I pulled out a single leather-bound document. This house, I said, holding the document up for them all to see, has not legally belonged to me for 5 years. It and every asset I own belongs to the Emily Foster Irrevocable Trust. A trust? Jason stammered. The word sounded foreign in his mouth. Yes, son, a trust. The one I established the day after your mother's funeral. The one I created to protect her memory, to protect this house from people exactly like you and your wife. I walked over to Jason, who was being held firmly by Detective Miller. I opened the folder to the last page. Do you remember this, Jason, 5 years ago? You came to me. You needed money for that can't-miss tech startup. The one you ran into the ground in less than 6 months. You needed $100,000. I remember. He whispered, his eyes fixed on the paper. I gave it to you, I said. I gave you the money. But it wasn't a gift, son. It was a transaction. This, I tapped the signature line, is your signature. You signed away all future claims, all rights of inheritance to this property, and all assets within the Emily Foster Trust, in exchange for that $100,000 payout. I closed the folder with a quiet thud. You burned your inheritance, Jason. You sold your birthright for $100 grand. And you were so eager for the cash you didn't even read what you were signing. Jason just stared at the document, his mind finally completely shutting down. But Alicia was still fighting. She was a cornered rat. The trust, she hissed at Ben, her eyes wild. So it's in a trust. Who's the beneficiary? Him. She jerked her cuffed hands toward me. We'll fight it. We'll contest it. We'll say he was incompetent then. Ben Carter actually smiled. It was a terrible, thin-lipped smile. That will be difficult, Mrs. Foster. As the trust's executor, I can assure you Mr. Foster is not the primary beneficiary. Then who is, well? Micah Russo yelled from the wall, his voice cracking. Who gets it all? Who gets the money? I let the silence stretch for a beat. I looked around my beautiful home. I looked at the staircase Emily used to walk down every morning. I looked at the doorway where we had marked Jason's height as a boy, a faded pencil mark I still couldn't bring myself to paint over. And then I delivered the last beautiful final truth. When I pass, I said, my voice clear and strong, this house and every asset in the Emily Foster Trust, every stock, every bond, every last penny, is to be immediately liquidated. I paused. And the entire proceeds, all of it, are to be donated in full to the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. In Emily's name. Alicia didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just deflated. The sound that came out of her was a long, low wail of agonizing, hollow loss. It was the sound of a gambler who had just watched her final all-in life-or-death bet get swept off the table. She hadn't just lost the house. She hadn't just lost the money. She realized in that one horrible, clarifying moment that she had committed assault fraud and now faced prison, all for a prize that was never, ever hers to win. You get nothing, I said quietly, as the detectives began to lead them out the door. You never did. The trial, when it finally happened, was not a trial. It was a foreclosure. A cold, methodical summary of debts owed and payments due. Ben Carter was not a lawyer. He was an executioner. He didn't make arguments. He just laid out the evidence piece by piece on a sterile table for the jury to see. There was the high-definition video from the dining room camera. The 6 silent, agonizing minutes where Jason sat staring at his plate while his wife and her parents planned the hostile takeover of my life. There was the crystal-clear audio from the microphone in my pen, where Alicia's voice, sharp and greedy, called me a senile old fool who needed to be managed. And then there was the main event. Exhibit A. Ben placed the 8x10 photographs from the St. Jude emergency room on the projector. My face split open. The dark, neat stitches. He placed those photos right next to the police body cam footage from 10 minutes later. The footage of Alicia, her face a perfect mask, of tearful, desperate concern, telling Officer Riley that I was confused and had fallen on the glass. The jury didn't even deliberate. They were out for 45 minutes. It was just long enough for them to have a courtesy cup of coffee before ruining their lives. Jason was first. He stood before the judge, a hollowed-out man. He had lost 50 pounds in pretrial detention. He didn't look at me, not once. He just stared at his cuffed hands on the table. The judge called his actions a profound and baffling betrayal of the most fundamental human decency. 5 years state prison. For conspiracy to commit fraud, felony, breaking and entering, and perjury for lying to the police. He didn't react. He just nodded a slight jerky motion, as if he had known this was the only possible end since the moment I told him I had paid his debts. Then came Alicia. Oh, Alicia had one last performance left in her. She cried. She begged. She tried to blame Jason. She blamed his gambling debts. She blamed her parents. She even blamed me for trapping her, for not just giving them the money when they asked. The judge was an older woman about my age with eyes that looked like they had seen every lie a human being could tell. She listened patiently. And when Alicia was finally done with her desperate sobbing monologue, the judge leaned into her microphone. "Mrs. Foster," she said, her voice quiet but filling the entire courtroom. "You did not just assault an old man, you assaulted your father. You did not just plan fraud. You architected a plot to psychologically torture and steal the dignity of the man who provided for your husband. You are a predator." 8 years. 8 years for assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted grand larceny. She screamed. She screamed that it wasn't fair, that I had tricked her, that she was the victim. She was still screaming that it wasn't her fault, as the bailiff pulled her hands behind her back and led her away. As for Mike and Diana Russo, they were a footnote. They were not my priority. They were handed over to the U.S. Marshals. The state of Florida wanted them badly. I read about it 6 months later. They were convicted on multiple federal counts of bankruptcy fraud. They both got 3 years. They gambled on my house to save their assets, and in doing so, they lost the one thing they had left: their freedom. It was over. The house was quiet. The accounts were secure. The vultures were in their cages. It's been a year. The house is quiet again. Quieter than before. I'm sitting in Emily's garden. Her roses are in full bloom this spring. The air is sweet. I find I spend most of my days out here now. The silence is no longer heavy with conspiracy. It is just peace. I trace the thin white line on my right cheek. The scar has faded, but it's still there. The doctors did good work, but some things are meant to leave a mark. It doesn't hurt anymore. It's just a reminder. A reminder of what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. A reminder of how close I came to losing everything. I lost my son. I must be clear about that. There was no victory in his conviction. I watch the footage from the trial, sometimes the footage from the cameras in my home. I watch his face when I told him I had paid his debts. It was not the face of a monster. It was the face of a weak, broken child trapped in a 45-year-old man's life. I lost him to greed, to his wife's ambition, to his own desperate need for a life he didn't earn. That is a tragedy. But I did not lose my wife. I did not lose Emily. I protected her memory. I protected this house, this garden, this sanctuary she built. They did not get to sell it. They did not get to sleep in her bed or throw her books on the floor. Her memory remains intact. Her legacy is safe. And now so are many others. The Emily Foster Irrevocable Trust did its job. With the house and its assets secured, I used my own personal wealth, the money they never knew I had, to start something new. I sit on the board of that foundation now. It's called the Foster Foundation for Elder Protection. Ben Carter runs it, of course. We use my 40 years of experience as an investigator and his 50 years as a lawyer to provide free legal aid to seniors who are being financially or legally abused by their own families. Last week, we helped an 80-year-old woman in Ohio stop her grandchildren from having her declared incompetent so they could sell her farm. Her case was agonizingly familiar. But this time, when she called for help, someone answered. My son is in prison. My daughter-in-law is in another. They are ghosts. But I am here, in Emily's garden. The work is done. Justice in its own cold and imperfect way has been served. My plan, my final investigation, it's complete. Phase 2 and the final phase of my old life is over. The house is quiet. And I am at last at peace. What this entire ordeal taught me is a painful but necessary lesson. Kindness without boundaries is an open invitation for abuse. I spent years believing that love was enough, that my son would eventually find his way. But love cannot cure greed, and weakness is a choice. True strength isn't about how loud you can yell. It's about how long you can stay silent, how carefully you can plan, and having the courage to protect your peace, even if it means cutting away a part of your own heart. Never let anyone, especially family, mistake your quiet dignity for weakness. What would you have done in my position? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and please like and subscribe for more stories just like